Welcome to Talk It Over. I'm so thankful that you're with us today to have a conversation, to really lean into the words of Jesus that he spoke on the Sermon on the Mount. We're in the middle of this series. If you're joining us here for the first time today, we want to welcome you. Now, 2.0 is really about how to do life better than we've done it in the past. And Jesus today is going to be talking about a means or a tool that God has given us in order to obtain balance in life. Now, everybody knows this balance is key in order to move forward. It's important. Without balance, we'll fall over. Without balance, we don't know which way is up and which way is down. Now, the question I have for you today is this: how do you maintain or even restore balance? And I don't mean, well, actually, let's talk about it. I'd like you to talk about physical balance. And then I'd like you to break the conversation to a second part. How do you maintain or even restore spiritual balance? So talk about that and try to break it down and see if you can find any similarities between the two. Now I want you to read from Matthew chapter 6, verse 5. Okay, this is what Jesus is teaching his disciples, that healthy, balanced prayer must never be about being seen. Now, a lot of people would say, how do I make sure that I'm having a healthy life, a healthy prayer life? Jesus is going to tell you right now, he's going to say, make sure that your prayer is not about you. He would say that this kind of prayer loses, or for example, all rewards. You will have no reward from this kind of prayer. Essentially, it's empty. There's no purpose in praying it, unless, of course, you want attention, Jesus says. Now, the question I have for you now is, how has being seen ever impacted your prayer? Think back on the times when people said, hey, will you please pray for me? Or think about those times when you have prayed. Has that ever crept into your mind? Has public pressure or experiences of being in public when you pray, has it ever impacted your prayer? And talk about whether it's positive, negative, or whatever. So share that with one another. Next question. What is Jesus saying we need to be careful about when we pray? Okay, now I want you to read from Matthew chapter 6, verse 6. Okay, this is what Jesus is teaching. He says that creating space for God-focused prayer is important. Here's how you do it, Jesus says. He says, go to your room, shut the door, and pray. Very, very simple. But essentially, he's teaching them that they need to have structure, that they need to create boundaries, that there needs to be some deliberate attempt in order to block out the distractions of the world and create a space in which people can connect with God. And it's really important because a lot of people back then actually thought that they needed to go to the temple in order to pray or connect with God. They thought that prayer, real prayer and really connecting with God couldn't be done in their own room. But Jesus is saying, no, you can connect fully 100% with God in your own room. Now, here's the question for you today. How would your prayer life practically look different if you implemented something like Jesus' instructions on how to pray? So take what Jesus just said on prayer and then kind of use it as an overlay on your prayer life and talk about what real things, what practical things that you might do right now. Come up with a brainstorm list on how to apply the teaching that Jesus has just given. Okay, now I want you to read from Matthew chapter 6, 7 through 8. Okay, this is what Jesus is saying. He says that productive, balanced prayer has structure. Why? Because structure enables us to focus. See, when we have structure, it gives us a path. It gives us a map by which we can guide our thoughts. You may not know this, but each of us has a different thought map that we follow every single day with everything that we do. Actually, before we move forward, I'm going to throw in an extra question today. I want you guys to be talking about your thought map. What does your prayer look like? What kind of thought map do you usually go through? And talk about how you start out, how you end, how long it takes, those kinds of things. Be open, share with one another. It's okay to get to know each other in this way. See, that's the thing that Jesus is talking about. I hope that conversation was good, but about building in healthy thought map. He's going to help you find out the way to pray in a really healthy way. Now read Matthew chapter 6, verse 9 through 15. Okay, this is the meat of the conversation that Jesus is having. He's giving a framework for a prayer. He's not saying you have to pray those exact words. Some theologians might think that he's doing that and say that he is, but it can be both and. You can say it and use it as a framework. But Jesus is really saying that forgiveness is the meat of the conversation. And that in forgiveness, true balance is restored. And giving forgiveness enables us to receive forgiveness. Jesus is saying if you really want to have that depth of spiritual balance in your life, your conversation needs to go deep. You need to go to that place where your soul has been crowded out by darkness and by unforgiveness and by your own reflecting the world's unforgiveness rather than reflecting God's forgiveness in your life. Now here's a question. Why do you think, now unpack it together, why do you think that forgiveness-focused prayer, why do you think that a forgiveness-focused prayer what do you think it does to change the way that we pray? Or what do you think that a forgiveness-focused prayer does to change the way that we pray? There we go. Now, the other thing that Jesus would want you to know today and would want you to have a takeaway from is that prayer is powerful and it changes us so that we can change the future. See, prayer is not just about us staying inside of that locked room and having the doors shut and being alone in that time with God. And then once we achieve that forgiveness, never to leave that room because that's actualization, that's our whole mission. No, Jesus would say, that is done, and now that has freed you so that you can go and be a change maker. You can go into the world and you can bring about forgiveness. Now I'd like you to do something different this week. I'd like you to spend some time together in prayer. I would like you guys to potentially try to stick to the framework of the prayer that Jesus provided. You can deviate from it, it's no big deal, but make sure, Jesus would say, if you feel like you're not following that, make sure that you're providing a prayer that is not focused on you. And to the extent that you can, take the teachings that Jesus has just provided you with and incorporate them into your prayer, and make sure that you're not embarrassed too, because the prayer is not about you. So you should not even be worried about what other people think. It's really, really got to be focused on God. So use this time. Don't get all worried about it now that you've had all this big teaching on prayer, but now use this time to pray for one another. Why? Because prayer is powerful. It's powerful. Prayer changes us, and it changes us so that we can change the world. And so I loved this conversation today with you, and I'm looking forward to having a conversation next week. Next week is about what you invest in and how Jesus teaches us that what you invest in matters. Take care, have a good one, and I'll see you at our next Talk It Over.